thank you for attending our sessions. I'm just overwhelmed with emotion. This has been an amazing experience and my first opportunity to be at Quest. And I'm so privileged to be able to tell our story one more time from just one element of excellence. I brought the criteria with me because I don't know if this happened to you, but the first time I looked at the book, I was reading it and reading it and reading it, and I got kind of confused, and it got a little bit harder, and then I was flipping to the back of the book, looking for the answers, which there aren't any. But it didn't take long to figure out that when you read it, the word how appears over 80 times. How do you do this? How do you do that? It also has the word process over 200 times. So when you think about it, it becomes pretty evident that how you do things using processes is sort of a secret decoder ring to the criteria, if there is such a thing. And I was struck by how amazingly non-prescriptive the criteria are. It really, truly allows you to choose your journey. But at the same time, it's terrifying, really. Like, you know, how many of you are just starting? It's like, where do we begin? How do we start this journey? So what I want to share with you is how we chose to start our journey and some of the things that worked for us. A lot of you attended my CAT 6 presentation, but I do think 6.1 is the backbone to really making everything else work. It truly is the mother lode of integration, because when you think about it, if you have an approach and you're able to deploy and you learn from that and then you're integrated, what you're describing is processes that are linked holistically across your entire organization. And I loved what Jeff said, because 6.1 really truly is the deliberate practice part of the criteria. It is learning how to do what you do and doing it really well. So with that said, this is not where we started. I mean, this is where we started. We didn't start with a robust framework and understanding what we were doing. We're a credit union. We have people that have worked there for 27, 28 years. And when we started this journey just 6 years ago, we really looked at these people as our tribal elders. They were the ones who held the knowledge of the organization, and they were passionate. They still are. That's our culture. You've felt that and experienced it, I'm sure, as you've been in our presentations. But what we were struggling with is that knowledge was still in their heads, and you know that's not the Baldrige way. It's not sustainable, it's not repeatable, and it's definitely not measurable. So that was what we were up against. If you're just starting your journey, we actually started with really one documented process. Does anyone want to take a guess? Payroll. We knew how to do that right in a documented process. And I'm being playful. It's not that we didn't know what we were doing. It's just that we hadn't written it down. So we didn't have a clear understanding end to end of how we did our work. We now have over 320 processes and sub-processes documented, linked, and governed. So we truly understand how we run our business. In addition to that, we've found 1,000 knowledge assets that are all related to those processes. So as an organization, our letters, our forms, our notices, our desk level procedures are all linked to those business processes. We also have, and we are a small organization of 350 people, 40 trained facilitators. So the secret to our success was really starting to learn how to empower, and I liked what Jeff said about sort of doing it the way others don't. We decided to just empower everybody to take this journey with us because we were scared. It's frightening. I remember when Jerry announced that we were going after the National Malcolm Baldrige Award, and I was sitting in an all-staff meeting, and I thought, oh my gosh, and I about fell out of my chair. And then he said, yes, and this is our big, hairy, audacious goal. It was just terrifying. It really was. We got ourselves together. We poured through the criteria. We started to really get our feet underneath us. And what we decided to do was build a holistic foundation using the entire organization. This is not a traditional model. You know, you go off in a corner, you work on a process, it lives with the Lean Sigma people, most organizations don't just say, hey, let's all get connected, let's all figure out how to do our processes. We had a ton of help in the beginning. We had a coach, Jan Johnson, amazing coach. We have a strong regional program in the Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence, but APQC for us became sort of our mall map, I guess is how I would describe it. The APQC provides frameworks end-to-end that show you how your organization should link, and it does it by industry. So we chose the financial model, of course, but the challenge is that we couldn't take that APQC framework and then go to the tribal elders and say, okay, this is how we're going to do business, right? We're all going to follow these processes from the APQC. They would have been terrified. What we did is we took that survey and we turned it into, we took the framework and we turned it into a survey, a simple survey. Here's your list of processes by your department. Do you recognize any of these? Do you think you do any of this? Does it look like anything you do now? And we made it playful, and we made it fun, and we made it engaging, and it was a colorful survey. We got the teams engaged, and they responded back, as you can see here. 87% told us that they did not have a work process that was documented. So now I know I'm on a double diamond slope. For those of you who are using our ski analogy, we had heavy lifting to do. So we made it safe, we made it fun, and I loved what Jeff said about engaging people, because we knew that from where we were starting, this was going to be challenging for people. So as you can see in this picture, we used toys, we used games. Jan actually helped us with a lot of this. And we started gradually teaching people, what is the process? What do we mean when we say process? Where does it start? Where does it stop? What's a swim lane? How do you do your work? It was really important in the beginning that we engaged everybody and made it fun. And if I can just share one thing for us, it was that we truly made it safe not to be wrong. Everybody got to play. Everybody got to play. It didn't matter. We got everybody in the organization engaged. And as you can see in this particular photo, we actually did life-size processes on the walls, and we let people use sticky notes to try to identify what's an activity and what would come next, and they were working collaboratively, like Jeff said. They're working as a team. They're starting to understand what is this new world called process. We had a ton of fun doing it. We used simple tools. Almost so simple it seems simplistic, but it wasn't. We taught them how to do SIPOCs using the analogy of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So if you're going to make a sandwich, right, what kind of sandwich are you going to make? Is it going to be crunchy peanut butter, grape jam, wheat bread? Do you want the crust on? Do you want the crust off? How do you want that sandwich? But what we were teaching people is you have to listen to your customer, your member. You have to, in our case, our member. You have to listen to what it is they want, because if you're building sandwiches that no one wants, it's not going to work. So this became a metaphor in our organization. Lots of people started to understand the inputs and the outputs of a process. What's a customer? What's a requirement? How do I know if I'm getting it right? With all this work that we were doing, we now created our own mall map. We built our own enterprise process map, which was an all-in effort, right? We got all those survey results back. We heard from everybody. They told us what they thought their processes were or weren't. We spent an entire summer trading sticky notes on walls thinking, do you have that process? Do I have that process? Oh, we both have that process, trying to figure out who are we? What are the processes of the organization? And we went through about 12, 14 iterations of this enterprise process map. I can tell you, when I look back on our journey, this was probably one of the most important things we did, because we had people in silos, in departments. This is the way we've always done it. I've been here for 24 years. I have all the knowledge. I know how to do this. But all of a sudden, we'd put it out on the wall and said, well, this is the new view. This is where we're going. This is the direction we're headed. And it started helping people understand that they didn't live in a department, they didn't live in a silo, they lived inside the organization, a holistic organization. And we really, truly engaged people in the, in the building of this. Our enterprise process map that you just saw on the last slide, we actually built a life-size model of that in one of our conference rooms, in one of our active conference rooms. So now when you walked into Caribou Ranch, right, the walls were lined with our enterprise process map. We were saturated with who are we, where are we going, what does this mean? My favorite exercise that we did, again, like Jeff says, using team collaboration, is we took managers and we lined them up against the enterprise process map on the wall, and we handed them a piece of red yarn. So each person standing side by side, shoulder to shoulder with a piece of red yarn. And they're looking at the enterprise process map, and we asked a really simple question. A member just came into one of our branches. They have a $100 coupon in their hand, and they'd like to redeem it to open a new account. Please take your piece of the string and put it on the process from which you think this begins. You think that's simple, right? You think that would be like everybody would get it, right? So this is how it looked. People were shoving and fighting and pushing, and where were they trying to put the string? That whatever belonged to them, exactly. They were trying to go to their process, right? It starts and begins with me. What I do is most important. It was eye-opening because we really had been giving people training wheels and helping them figure this out, we thought, until we went through this exercise. So we did that exercise over and over and over again, and we did it with lots of managers, lots of supervisors, trying to help them understand value stream, end to end. Where does it really begin? Where does it really end? And people's eyes were truly being open to a holistic view of the organization. We gave them many tools. I won't go into the details of that. We did that in CAT 6.1, but we gave them many tools because what we said is, as you're starting to build processes, we don't own the processes in my group, Performance Excellence. You own the processes, so you build them. You know what you're doing. You know how you do your work. And we made it safe. It wasn't wrong if you built a procedure instead of a process. That's how they saw their work in the beginning, right? Cycles of learning, cycles of refinement. But we did give them tools, a 50-page workbook. It's on our website. If you want it, you can have it. How do you build a process? It's a self-guided tour. At this point now, we were actually starting to, everybody getting their wheels on, we were starting to get a little bit more focused, and those of you who were in CAT 6.1 know that we now had a lot of paper-based SIPOCs that were becoming a little unruly, a little bit unmanageable. We started teaching people how to do process modeling. And as you can see in this diagram, this is exactly how, this graphic, this is exactly how it looks in our conference rooms. All these processes are on the walls, but it was becoming unwieldy. We really needed a repository. We needed a way to work together in software. We chose BlueWorks Live. If you're not familiar with this tool, I highly recommend it. It's simply a modeling tool that's community-based, and when we adopted this, process went viral. We took our enterprise process map that we had built together, that our managers had built together, that they had created, that they knew what it meant, and we migrated it right into the homepage of BlueWorks Live. So when you popped into BlueWorks Live, you could see our map. You could see where the processes were going, who they linked to. When you're in a process, and when you get to the end, you can click a link, it takes you to the next process. So people were truly going viral in their ability to build processes. This is a great example. We have lots and lots of people who, with the processes, once they had them in the software, were able to print them out. They posted them on walls. And like Jeff said in the previous session, they're now collaborating. They're standing at the wall talking about, is this really how this works? And if this breaks here, why did it break? They're doing root cause analysis together because they can see the processes. They built charts, just like the one you see there, where they were able to monitor what's the performance of the process? How are we doing? Why is it working? Why is it not working? Very different model than what I'm used to seeing, which is somebody controls that experience, right? Somebody's guiding or facilitating that process. They were doing it for themselves. So out of that emerged my beloved Special Forces. These were a group of people who were early adopters, and they came from all parts of the organization. They could be a vice president. They could be an individual contributor with no direct reports. But these were people who got it. So we reinvented ourselves from the inside out. These were the people who were the early adopters. They were out learning process, going to training, putting their processes on the wall, showing up to production meetings, our Crazy 8 operational rhythm, for those of you who were in that, showing up to the production meeting and being able to talk metrics, performance, etc. It took us a couple years to realize just how powerful this group of people was. and how much of a difference they made. They were the leaders in the organization, and they came from all parts. What we did is we put them in charge of each part of the enterprise process map, so a particular category or subcategory. They weren't the process owners, they were the facilitators. They were the ones who got people in the room, they drew the flow, they helped model the flow charts in BlueWorks, they kept governance over those processes, but these were our special forces, early adopters. They meet every 6 weeks now. They share best practices. They talk about ways to make things better. They talk about what they've learned. We were truly viral at this point. Everybody in the organization spoke process. And if you are into the criteria, what you understand is that without process, it's pretty hard to build the rest of the criteria out. We had a foundation that allowed us to bring the OFIs back into the organization when we got our site visits and apply them immediately. It gave us a common language from which we could all operate. It was interesting because as people started to get the hang of this, they started building their own dashboards, their own goal charts. We weren't even at the point yet where we had enterprise-wide dashboards where we could actually understand what we were doing. They were doing it on their own. It was competitive. Out of the middle of all of that, a BHAG trophy emerged where people were actually, process owners, were actually handing off every quarter in our all-staff meeting the coveted BHAG trophy. At this point, we were truly confident in what we were doing. We had momentum. People were playing. People were engaged. And so what we did is we took the feedback that we were getting, those opportunities for improvement, we turned those into games. We turned it into something fun. It wasn't something bad, it was something good. And this is an idea that came out of the Special Forces. They built game boards that matched their area of expertise, like the people department picked chutes and ladders. Our lending team picked lending land instead of candy land. And they literally built game boards with their OFIs, and as they knocked those OFIs off, as they were able to fix and improve their processes, they self-selected the awards they were going to receive. Flip-Flop Friday, Starbucks coffee. It was fun, it was engaging, and people saw it as an opportunity to improve, not as something that, wasn't right. So I think those of you who were in 6-1 saw this slide. It's been an amazing journey, and there's a ton of mechanics around this, obviously, what we shared in CAT 6-1. But I think what resonated for me with Jeff was that it's still the human-to-human interaction. It's still people working together and collaborating and trying to do something better. That is the bottom line. And we, at this point, obviously have a pretty stable BPM methodology. But it's so funny because we have the dialogue of a family. We talk about things like, remember when you screwed up the peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Or, funny things like, I remember when you yanked the yarn out of my hand when we were trying to do the wall exercise. It's just the dialogue of a family, telling stories and having fun. People cry when they get the BHAG story and they tease each other about it. It truly was the human-to-human connection that for us made BPM stick. So it has been a phenomenal opportunity to be a part of this journey. Amazing. I hope that I'm feeling that we're all now part of a family too. We're learning from each other. I learned from you this week, you're learning from us. I just think the dialogue can be bigger. We can continue to learn from each other. And so in closing, what I'd like to do is let you hear from our special forces, the people who actually did this work.
Bottom line, deploying process and procedures completely turned my team's performance around. When we started this journey, we were drinking from a fire hose. Now we have a water fountain.
I would say the onboarding process improvement effort was really eye-opening. We realized that dozens of processes and departments were impacted just by onboarding one new employee.
I was able to map out our regulatory requirements for how we do our work across the company, which helps me in my day-to-day work as a compliance officer.
During process development, we were able to identify downstream effects, which allowed us to work with our stakeholders before we deployed our process. This got all of the heated conversations out of the way earlier rather than later.
When I saw all the business lending processes end to end for the first time, I immediately realized why our turn time had been subpar. We had several gaps in our handoffs, which we were able to fix.
One of the best parts of my job at Elevations is that I get to conduct process training. I especially enjoy the controversy around peanut butter or jelly first, and when we start cutting crust off the bread, it gets crazy.
Thank you very much.